It's never too early to be wrong about something. So you and I are going to make all kinds of predictions on the awards. And we're going to start with the MVP. Last year, obviously, Joker won the award, followed by SGA, Luka, Giannis, and Jalen Brunson. Luka's the favorite here at plus 330, Bill, followed by SGA, Joker, Giannis, and Ant are both plus 800, and then Jalen Brunson at plus 1200. How do you feel about this? So you have strong opinions on the MVP?
I kind of do. By the way, I think that Brunson bet, I'm not going to choose Brunson as my likely candidate, but at 12, you said 12-1, right? That's a pretty.
Plus 1200, yeah.
If you think the Knicks, I don't want to cannibalize our show tomorrow, and a lot of these picks for me are dictated somewhat by what I think the outcomes will be for teams. Because for me, John, I think there's a difference at the end of a lot of these years in who should be the MVP and sometimes who is. I think narratives carry the day sometimes, and I think there are years where, like the year that Embiid won, your guy, it's not that he didn't deserve it, but I thought he did a great job 2 years ago, kind of setting the stage that he felt like he got cheated out of one.
He was getting close.
Right. And last year, he got to go back to kind of what we expected would happen, right, without giving the same guy the same award 5 years in a row. So with that, with the power of narrative, which I think really matters, and as a voter who's voted before, and I think will vote again this year, try not to fall into this, but I think sometimes you get excited about the new thing, or there's a pattern that plays out. I think voters are probably going to be pretty excited for somebody new and somebody different. It's just sort of, for me at least, look at the landscape. I know we're going to talk Wembanyama. We're going to talk a lot of interesting teams this year when we do our show tomorrow, and kind of maybe get into some team predictions. I think there's going to be some changes in the pecking order in the NBA. And I think some of these emerging stars that we've talked about the last year on the podcast are going to become actual stars. So I think there's going to be an appetite for somebody new, if not the face of the league, the sort of MVP, all of which is to say, I'm going with SGA. And I know it could be close. I know that you loved, I mean, you were on this team and sort of what they could be. I'm not making any more, by the way, I haven't paid this bet yet. I'm not making any more bets with you, just so you know. I'm going to be my own MVP and not lose any more money to you. Okay, I think the Thunder, like we all do, are going to be the best or one of the best teams in the Western Conference. I think there's some injuries going on, but they're loaded. And to be the best player and the best team in the NBA, I guess unless you're Jason Tatum, I think is usually the surefire way to rise up if it's a fairly open MVP market, fairly open situation. I think it will be. I think it's going to be hard for Joker to get another one. I'm a little skeptical about Embiid getting another one. I think Giannis is interesting. And Luka, for me, he's the betting favorite. I'm just not as high in Dallas, maybe as some other people. And I think the Thunder have the chance to be sensational. And SGA is obviously sensational. So I like Shai to be the guy. But you could throw 7 names my way, John, and I'd be like, okay, I'm here for that argument.
Yeah, I threw 5 names at you. Interestingly, according to the odds makers, Jason Tatum, you mentioned him, not one of the favorites to win MVP. Best team on the best player on the best team last year, and then didn't make it into the top 5. Jalen Brunson squeaked it out, although he was first team All NBA. I'm with you. There's a lot to unpack. I mean, you mentioned Embiid. Last year he was going crazy. I mean, he looked amazing, and then he got hurt again. So I don't think he's going to make the games threshold at 65 games. So I'm going to toss him out. Brunson's a long shot. I'm going to toss him out. I'm with you on the narrative that it's going to be hard. The bar is so high for Joker to win a 4th in 5 years. Only LeBron has ever done that. It's going to be incredibly difficult. He'd have to go gangbusters without KCP. I think, with Jamal Murray, who knows what kind of returns they're going to get on Jamal Murray this year. He didn't look great in the Olympics, and he had a pretty bad, except for 2 shots last year in the playoffs, pretty bad playoffs. So I think that he would have to carry them and end up as the 1 or 2 seed in the West and look really insane for him to win another one. Same thing with Giannis. I just think the bar is pretty high, and the narrative does matter, right? I mean, we came out of the postseason last year where everybody was talking about Luka as the favorite, and he is the money-making favorite on this at plus 330. So I think the narrative really matters there. And then SGA, I like him too, which is why he's probably doomed, because I also picked him.
Yeah.
You and I are here with SGA being the best player on the best team in the Western Conference. And we're going to do our team predictions tomorrow where we go through both.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Breakdown.
It was hard.
It was so hard, especially in the West.
Brutal.
But I have, as a little spoiler here, I have Oklahoma City coming out of the Western Conference, and I have SGA monster year, which is why I have SGA. But Luka's counting stats are going to be pretty silly. I just don't know that the Mavs, if they finish in that 3, 4, 5 grouping somewhere in there, be enough over the hump for him to get it?
I think three's I know we're gonna do this tomorrow, but that's part of the reason I think three's ambitious. And I think, yeah, I'm with you. Look, Luca is obviously like a solid bet in the sense that he's the betting favorite and he's an absolute machine. And there's also the reality it's hard to envision him having a career without an MVP, right? He's going to get one, and so maybe why not this year? Can I throw you threw a few names out of there? Can I just circle back on Brunson because you kind of dismissed him quickly?
Yeah.
Let's just say the Knicks. Let's say the Celtics are awesome, but the Knicks are one game better this year, and they are the best team by record. Let's say in the East or the NBA. I don't know. I think there's a world if Brunson's awesome. Should you factor in? Should I factor in when I vote? I think we talked about this a little bit a few months ago. He also gave up a bunch of money to bring all these dudes in, right? To like facilitate the team. And I think that am I allowed to have that sort of weigh on I think it will if they're awesome.
Yeah. I mean, depending on where they end up in the Eastern Conference, right? I have a hard time believing that the Celtics aren't going to win the East pretty handily again. I don't think that they'll be double-digit games ahead of everybody else like they were last year in the standings. And I do really like the Knicks, and I think they're incredibly deep. Although, that depth took a little bit of a hit with the trade. I just have a hard time believing that the Knicks are going to get past the Celtics in the standings for the regular season, maybe in the playoffs. Yeah. Producer Aaron threw this out. Let me any hope at all for some of the old guys? I mean, he throws out LeBron and Steph, and I think that that's like a bridge way too far because they're going to be pretty far down in the standings. What about this one? And your mileage may vary on the Suns. I'm not super high on them. I think they're going to be in that 4-5 grouping somewhere in there. But let's say that the Suns overachieve, and they're the Suns that that Ishbia and all those guys thought that they could be. Let's say that they end up in the 2 seed in the Western Conference. Now all of a sudden,
2 seed.
I'm just throwing it like devil's
My
advocate.
mileage certainly varies in that respect.
I don't think that they'll be this high either, but devil's advocate here. Let's say that the Suns take off and all of a sudden Bud's got them playing really well. KD or Booker?
Booker, maybe. I mean, look, if the Suns finish second in the Western Conference, someone needs to be an MVP candidate. And I suppose my best guess would be Booker. But also, if I dunked a basketball, somebody should celebrate me. I don't think either of those things are ever happening in the history of the world. I'm just, and I am going to see the Suns play I'm going to go to the Clippers game on Wednesday. I haven't been to that arena yet. I haven't seen it. So
You'll have
maybe
to report back. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, maybe on we won't be on the air together until after that game, till next Monday. But maybe after one game, I'll be convinced because I'll forget the Clippers are no good when the Suns win by 14 points and Booker and KD put up 20 or 30. No LeBron, obviously, no Steph, no KD. I think the biggest dark horse I have, and he's not one of these guys, is Tatum, who you mentioned, because I do wonder if the Celtics, to your point, are the best team in the NBA this year again, or the best team in the East. I think they will be. And he goes a little more, hero mode at times. He wants to get if he's focused on himself a little bit, is there a combination of that and maybe voters feeling like they kind of screwed him a year ago, where he gets the benefit of the doubt if he has a great year? I don't buy it, but that I put him ahead of those names you gave me.
What about Ant? I mean, he's
23
years old.
Yeah,
he looked great during the summer. He was amazing last year after Cat went down, and both of us, I thought, expected the Wolves to take a little step back, and they didn't because of him. Counting stats wise, he's pretty far behind Luka and SGA and Joker and Giannis, right? But this is another year where maybe he takes another step forward. I think he's probably a year or two removed from being a top tier MVP candidate. But if all of a sudden we'll do the whole what if devil's advocate thing again, if all of a sudden the Wolves are one in the Western Conference without Cat and they go, oh man, Ant isn't 2 or 3 years away from being the guy. He's the guy right now. Maybe, I mean, he's plus 800. Those odds aren't terrible.
I wrote his name down along with one other guy. I like Ant as a sort of a guy. I think you're right. He's probably a year or two away, but let's say he's, one of the top 2 or 3 scorers in the NBA and Minnesota wins the West. Oklahoma City falls back a little bit, or even there, Minnesota's 2 with no Cat because they can spin it however they want. They shaved money off, right? That was a money saving operation, not a let's get markedly better operation. And maybe if you want to give, the Timberwolves a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. A GM tried to make this case to me the other day. I don't really buy it, but he made the argument when Cat was hurt last year, Ant was awesome, and they were still really good. And maybe they got proof of concept that Anthony Edwards can carry them in ways that we haven't seen yet, and there will be a leap. And so if that happens, maybe. Also, can I just throw out one more name? I think Wemby is also worth keeping a long shot eye on, or at least to sort of sneak into the top 5, because if he has a monster year, and if the Spurs aren't going to make the playoffs, but if they're flirting with 40 games, you could have 8 or 9 or 10 guys that have a legitimate argument, like there were 6 last year, to be in the top 5.
Mhm.
And I think Wemby could be one of them. I mean, you said Tatum was not a top 5 guy last year. I think there's going to be maybe a handful more guys who are going to be in that sort of realm where they're not really number 1, but they're on the periphery of the conversation.
Wemby is an interesting case because his numbers are going to be gaudy.
Amazing.
But I don't think that the Spurs are going to be good enough to get him into a top 5 conversation. But in the next 2, 3, 4 years, for sure. I mean, we're going to get into more awards.
I know.
I think he's going to be on our list of awards coming up here. We're going to take a quick break. That's the MVP conversation to start this off. SGA, we've doomed you. I'm so sorry. We both like you, which means it's not going to be a great season in Oklahoma City. The wheels are going to come off. But yeah, no, I think that the reasons that we picked SGA make sense.